There are two languages spoken in Transylvania, Romanian and Hungarian, and they share quite often the same space. So Hungarian is in an island surrounded by Romanian speakers in Transylvania. So now do you see what is so strange about this map? Some of these million Hungarian speakers here want to be part of Hungary, and it would literally make Romania the shape of a donut. You cannot have a country that looks like a donut. You just can't. No. So why are these people in the middle of Romania in the first place? And what can be done about this situation? This is Ben Schwellen, and that's what this video is about. First, we need to establish who we're talking about here. Hungarians speak Hungarian and founded the Kingdom of Hungary, and trace their ancestry back to the conquest of the Carpathian Basin in the late 9th and early 10th centuries. However, the group in Transylvania, in Romania, the Szekelys, their origin is a bit more mysterious. And there are 4 different main ideas of where these Szekely people come from. First, the medieval Hungarian chronicles say they were there before them and related to Attila the Hun, 5 centuries before the Hungarians came. The next theory is that Szekely were a Turkic people who joined with the Magyars, that's the Hungarians, on the Eurasian steppe. The third notion is that these were border defense troops on the edge of the kingdom with special privileges and a bit of self-rule. The fourth idea is that they are related to the Avars, who ruled the Pannonian Plain between the 6th and 9th centuries. As for the Hungarians, or Magyars as I'll use for most of this video, they were a Uralic people, probably from between the Volga and the Ural Mountains in prehistory. Some people say they came from further east, in Siberia. For reasons that are not quite clear, they emerged out of the protection of the forest and on to the open and competitive Eurasian steppe. This was by the year 700. Sometime in the early 9th century, the Pechenegs attacked the Magyars in Levadia and drove them west into the land of Eltikos. Remember, Pechenegs are their enemy to the east. We'll get back to them later. Around 830, 7 Hungarian tribes, Jeno, Ker, Keszi, Kürtgyarmat, Magyar, Nyer, and Tarjan, formed an alliance in the land of Eltikos, swearing a blood oath to the young, elected king, Almos. These were called the Het Magyar, the 7 Magyars, the United Tribes. Before 881, and before the Magyars invaded what would become Hungary, 3 Turkic tribes rebelled against the Khan of the Khazars, were defeated and then joined the Magyars voluntarily, probably for self-defense. These joining 3 tribes created the Onugur, or 10 arrows, possibly one root of the word Hungarian. It does not help that the word Szekely is unclear where it comes from. We're not really sure what it means. What we do know is that around this time, Byzantium, under Emperor Leo VI, and the First Bulgarian Empire under Simeon, were at war with each other. The Byzantine emperor asked the Magyars to help them in their war, and the Magyar king Arpad, the son of Almos, invaded and attacked Bulgaria. So the Bulgarians called on the enemy of the Magyars, the Pechenegs, to attack. the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of thing. The Magyars were driven from the Pontic steppe and fled over the mountains into Transylvania around 860, which happened at the most opportune of moments. The Duke of Carinthia, Arnulf, in what was then the eastern edges of the declining Frankish Empire, was at war with Svatopluk, the Prince of Great Moravia, and decided to invite the Magyars into the Pannonian Plain to fight for him, as the Byzantines had done. A lot of that going around. The Magyars were successful, too successful, and they wiped out Moravia entirely, founding the Principality of Hungary, later the Kingdom, on top of it. But some Magyars either stayed in Transylvania or had come a few decades earlier, and we don't know why, nor which is true. Which brings me back to the four possible origins of the Szekely's. First, this Attila notion. He had come in, this was the 5th century, and there's no real sensible explanation that this is related Hun to Hungarians other than the two words are similar, which is nothing to go on. Because the Hungarians don't call themselves Hungarians. They're calling themselves Magyar. And there's no proof that the Huns were not Slavic. There's no proof who the Huns were at all. So we can't really accept that theory. The second theory, however, that Szekely's were a Turkic people who joined them. Maybe these 3 tribes who joined with them, maybe there's some link there. They remembered who they were, who they are at this point. And there was a difference between them and the main group. That's possible. And then the third category then being a military colonial type of people around the fringes of the kingdom is very likely. But we don't have any proof again. They do have traditions which reflect this, but that's not exclusive to the other groups. It doesn't mean that they were not distantly related to a Turkish people. And the fourth one, the Avars, these people who ruled the area before Moravia and before the Hungarians, it's not out of the question that these people could have been related to them. So their origins could be more than one thing, is what I'm saying. According to their own tradition, or rather the Hungarian tradition, the Szekely's came from the Huns, descended from Attila. 3 centuries later, the Gesta Hungarorum, the Deeds of the Hungarians, was written to explain the history of the conquest and where they came from. The notion of Hungarians being Huns is refuted by almost everyone sensible today, but this may have been how the Szekely's saw themselves as slightly different to the Kingdom of Hungary's main population of Magyars, and that's key to understand what happened later, and how Szekely's in Transylvania saw themselves. As the Kingdom of Hungary expanded, especially in the 13th century, it positioned military groups of Magyars and colonists along its frontiers. The Szekely were not just in Transylvania. People who speak or once spoke a similar dialect of Hungarian lived along most of the border counties during Hungarian's 13th century expansion phase. This suggests that these Szekely's in Transylvania were a rear guard defending the frontier, but it does not mean they were just that. They could have also been a part of the initial migration who stayed behind because they liked living there. Some could have been descendants of Turkic peoples within the Magyar alliance who still remembered they had some of their own heritage. They could have been both of these things rather than one or the other. And the Avars, another Eurasian semi-nomadic nation, may have contributed to them feeling that they were different somehow to the main Hungarian group as well. We don't know, but what is certain is that they are not from Attila the Hun, and that from the 13th century, within the Kingdom of Hungary and under the Count of the Szekélys, they retained their own special legal status, including tax exemptions and estate ownership rights, which prevented the King of Hungary from centralizing his authority in Transylvania, which would be a major ball ache for the King of Hungary later. Their privileges strengthened under King Andrew III in the 1290s, who did not want them siding with Vlachs in Wallachia further south. In exchange for special privileges, the Szekélys were obligated military service to the Hungarian crown, a common practice at the time throughout Europe with frontier peoples. This region came to slowly be known as Szekelyfold, where Hungarian, the language, is more spoken. The Kingdom of Hungary, centralizing its authority, clashed with Szekélys. They even revolted. Georgi Doja led a failed peasant revolt in 1513 and 1514, and his horrific execution, let's not go into the torturous details, but Doja's execution was gruesome. First, they forced him to sit upon a smoldering throne of red-hot iron, or metal of some kind. Then they brought actual wrought iron as a burning crown and forced it down upon his head. Then they forced his followers, under duress, to begin eating him alive, devouring him. And then, stopping before they killed him, they then quartered him and ripped him apart. Only a few years later, in 1526, the Kingdom of Hungary fell to the Ottoman Empire after the Battle of Mohacs, which is a fable in itself and another video about how not to run a country. But the remnants of the Hungarian monarchy fell back to Transylvania. The Kingdom of Hungary was split in two, or its rump states were, the heartland occupied by the Turks. And John II of Sigismund solidified his authority in Transylvania by removing the Szekélys' privileges. When the Szekélys rose up in revolt, he massacred them. He then called himself Prince of Transylvania, which would have been an insult to them on a very high level. After his death in 1570, the Szekélys were like, well, let's give it a go, and they rose up in revolt again to restore their liberties. John's successor, Stephen Báthory, defeated them, however, and had them executed or mutilated in a gruesome bloodbath. But his successor, Sigismund Báthory, joined the Holy League, an alliance of Christian states assembled by Pope Clement VIII in 1594, with the aim of driving the Ottomans out of Europe. Sigismund promised to restore the Szekélys' liberties if they joined him, and over 20,000 Szekélys did join him, together with Wallachia and Moldavia, those two principalities. The Transylvanian Szekélys defeated the Ottomans at the Battle of György. Despite this, Sigismund went back on his word and revoked their privileges. He did not give them their freedom, and yet again, the Szekélys rose up in revolt to claim their freedoms, their ancient rights. Stephen Bácskai, this guy, crushed them and conducted mass executions across Szekelyfold. However, 3 years later, in 1599, Mihai Bravu, Michael the Brave, who was the Prince of Wallachia, invaded, when Transylvania's new ruler, Andrew Báthory, shifted to a pro-Ottoman foreign policy which threatened Wallachia. In those days, if someone who is your friend helps your enemy, you have to kill them. So you see, the Szekélys, they often made enemies of the Hungarians and friends of the Romanians. So their relationship with Romania and Hungary is not simple. Szekélys captured the prince trying to flee to Poland, the one who Mihai Bravu invaded to take out, and they beat him to death with a shepherd's axe, before carrying his cut-off head to Michael the Brave. In turn for helping him, Michael the Brave restored their liberties. Not long after, however, Michael the Brave fell, and the Szekelys entered this cycle of rising up for their traditional liberties and being crushed for a couple centuries. I should add as well, because it's important, that the German language of the Saxon colonists was made the official language in 1784. This was a colonial imposition by the Austrians. This goes on until the Revolution of 1848. This was a liberal revolution against the old feudal order, which listed 12 points, including the formal union of the Transylvanian Diet with Hungary. Austria and Russia crushed this revolution, or rather, Austria failed to crush the revolution alone and begged Russia to help. And in Russian fashion, it went through Transylvania, murdering thousands of people. Hungarian speakers and Romanian speakers alike. In 1867, Austria and Hungary reached a compromise, however, which no one really wanted anywhere, but it was better than the situation before. And the old system of distinct Szekely seats in the parliaments and their privileges were abolished. The Austro-Hungarian Empire was born. Szekely identity. These people having to revolt and stand up again and again for their ancient privileges and rights over this period, which was about 400 years. This forged an identity that's almost a nationality of itself. Not quite Romanian, not quite Hungarian. But that said, you can't have a Romania that looks like a donut. To understand the current situation in Transylvania, we need to understand a term, a phrase, an event the Hungarians don't like very much. The Treaty of Trianon. World War I and its aftermath did not go well for the Hungarians, these Magyars. Here's a map of the traditional Kingdom of Hungary. And here's a map of what they had left after World War I and Romania's invasion. So you can see why some Hungarians might be a bit unhappy with this situation. Austria-Hungary fell apart after its defeat in the World War. And get this, this is madness. Hungary chooses a pacifist, Mihai Károlyi, to be prime minister 3 days after they are invaded by Romania. I mean, that's pretty dumb, right? You choose a pacifist to lead you after you've just been invaded? But I get ahead of myself. Why did Romania invade? What's the Romanian position? Well, first you have Mihai Bravo, Michael the Brave, who had unified what they consider the 3 principalities. Moldova and Wallachia, but also Transylvania. And it was under his rule. I mean, it was brief, but it was unified for a time. And historically, especially in the plains down from the Apuseni Mountains, there are loads and loads of Romanian speakers. Millions of them. And also these Apuseni Mountains and other cities are the industrial core, or were the industrial core, of the Kingdom of Hungary. Industry, ore, wealth, minerals, absorbed into Romania. Seeing this war was going unwell, Mihai Károlyi does something even stupider than the pacifistic retreat he's ordered already, allowing Romania's army over the river Tisa. He invites communists, who of course foul everything up, as Marxists always do. Never put communists in charge of your country. Though the communists lost power, it caused a situation where Hungary was forced to sign away 72% of its land. Yes, Hungary lost 72% of its land, which has left a scar upon Hungarian psychology to this day. Both Hungarians and the Magyars in Transylvania, the Szekelys. But for Transylvania's sake, the interwar period was chaotic in Transylvania, politically, and Hungary was seeing Germany and Italian fascists start to retake territory. Keep in mind the Hungarians had just had a horrible communist episode which destroyed their country, and so fascism seemed a bit tempting at the moment because, Marxists really are bad. For what happened next, you need to know that the Nazis had this grand revisionist idea of reordering historical wrongs kind of thing. Basically, redrawing parts of Central and Eastern Europe to how they felt the First World War should have gone. Revisionism never ends well. So when the Nazis took Czechoslovakia in 1938, they gave Hungary a bit after negotiation. And as they expanded east, they gave Hungary a bit of Transcarpathia in 1939, and then northern Transylvania, 1940. Hungary was trying to be pragmatic. However, they did try to flip sides to the Allies when it became clear that the Russians were coming and they were going to be subjected to communism again, but it did not go well for them, and Hungary lost Transylvania. The communists took over Romania and Hungary both. Transylvania was put back in Romania. At first, the communists created a Magyar autonomous region in 1952 to win over the Magyars and prevent revolt. But with guerrilla resistance to communism coming slowly to an end in Romania by about 1960, they could afford to change the borders of the region to decrease the official percentage of Hungarian speakers within it, to justify abolishing it in 1968, and begin a process of Romanianization. The root of it: communists do not like to share power, and other languages would prevent them from having all the power. But with the fall of the communist regime in 1989 and the revolution, things had a possibility of opening up. But there were ethnic conflicts, or tensions rather, in Târgu Mureș in 1990, or in Hungarian, Marosvásárhely, and people were wounded, cars were burned, it was quite violent for 3 days. So that shows even recently there are tensions between these two groups in this area. Viktor Orbán is controversial. This Viktor Orbán, you could say he's the Hungarian Donald Trump, but that doesn't quite fit. No, he's playing on this old revisionism, redrawing the borders, rebuilding the kingdom of Hungary, essentially. And he's not really being nice to his neighbors. His attitude's quite belligerent and hostile towards Romania, frankly. He's gone into Romania, giving speeches in Transylvania that are quite nationalistic. He's given Szekelys the right to vote in Hungarian elections. And I can understand the Treaty of Trianon was that bad for Hungarians. They're going to be bitter about that in their hearts for a long time. It was wrong what was done to them. What is the solution here? This Viktor Orbán and his revisionism, that's not the answer. So what do we do? How do we ensure both the unity of the Romanian state, because you can't have a country that looks like a donut? No. And how do we ensure that the Szekely are safe, their cultural rights, their heritage, They've been there for at least 1,000 years. I mean, you can't just laugh that away. If you're Hungary, you want these people back within your wider realm. And if the Szekelys are dismissed and vanished as a people, Romania will make an enemy that they burden themselves with for 1,000 years. I mean, no one wants that contention between these two nations. Surely Hungary does not want to fight a war against a larger country, Romania. And surely Romania does not want its industrial areas and its mining areas exposed. So what do? I think the answer is a federal Romania. Now, the Romanian state at present is highly centralized. I suppose they took a lot of advice from the French, perhaps. And the Romanian language is very much seen as the identity. And I get why. Romanians are the Latins that are removed from the rest, often Eastern Europe. They don't want to become Slavicized. But these Szekelys are part of this story. They've helped in several Romanian revolts. So their identity and culture and language cannot be dismissed. And I think a federation of some kind would help achieve recognition, tolerance, the unity of the Romanian state, and letting Hungary know you don't have to be so boisterous and threatening. We're going to take care of your people, but we do need the unity of our state. No donuts, please. Okay. What do you think? How do we protect the Szekelys and the unity of the Romanian state? What would your answer be? Romilio, thank you very much for watching. My Patreons on the screen now. Thank you for your contribution.